And I think I'll get started. So hello everyone, welcome to WAFFA's first event of 2023. Thank you so much for joining and also showing up for yourselves. And thank you to Ha and Garrett for sharing their wisdom and insights today on such an important topic, especially at the beginning of a new year. And so to quickly introduce myself, I'm Melinda. I graduated Wharton in 2020, and I recently joined WAFFA, Wharton Alumni Founders and Funders Association, as a volunteer. So this is my first event, and I'm really excited. And I also have Pam, who is the co-president for WAFFA this year, and she's been such a huge help with putting this event together. And she'll be on the line to support me later with the Q&A section. And I'm sure a good portion of you are familiar with WAFFA. We're on a mission to accelerate the success of Wharton and Penn alumni in the startup world, founders, investors, and supporters. We're one of the fastest growing alumni clubs of Penn, with over 5,400 members in just 3 years. And so, yeah, we're really excited to be building an ecosystem that fosters growth for women and accelerate our success in entrepreneurship and investing. And so I'll just drop the link to the website one more time in just a moment. We have a really great newsletter and Slack. And so just to give a quick overview of our time together, I'm going to pass it on to our awesome speakers in a moment to introduce themselves, and they'll be giving a really engaging 30-minute presentation. And then we'll have 15 to 20 minutes for Q&A. And we'll be really grateful if you can take our event feedback survey at the very end. And so just a few more call outs before I hand it over. Don't hesitate to use the chat, or if there's an opportunity to come off mute, feel free to do that. And definitely use the chat to share questions along the way, and then we'll save them towards the end during the Q&A section. And you can also message me one-on-one with a question if you're not wanting to put it in the general chat. And finally, if you have to leave early, or if you have friends who haven't or aren't able to join, we'll upload this recording afterwards on our YouTube channel, which is called Hello WAFFA. So yeah, I'm going to hand it over to Ha and Garrett.
Well, thank you so much, Melinda. I appreciate you hosting us, and thank you to Pam and the WAFFA team as well. This is, I think, my second talk with WAFFA, and it's always a great community, and really feel privileged to be asked to come back to speak. And by the way, for those who may not know me, I'm Ha, and I'll screen share in a bit the presentation and tell you a little bit about myself. But I like to keep these things interactive. So if I know you, I'm sort of seeing Tanvi and Dave Zinman and Mark on the call. I might cold call you, so don't be surprised. And then don't be shy about turning your camera on and being on Zoom. And I may end up cold calling as well. So try to keep it lively and fun because these presentations can sometimes get a little bit long and boring, and we don't want that. So I am going to screen share. So we are here to talk about strategy and planning. So Garrett and I put together this talk specifically for startups. So I think it really benefits any size company. And even if you're late stage, I know you'll get something out of it. So a bit about us. So hi, everyone. I'm Ha. I'm a Wharton grad. And I went undergrad. I also got my MBA from HBS. And then in 2000, I moved out to the Bay Area because I saw the 1.0 boom, tech boom, and I knew I needed to be part of it. So I joined a fledgling startup called eBay when it was about 120 people. And I was there during a really, really special time. I started my career in product management, was there for 5 years. And after those 5 years, I realized that I'm a startup girl. I love the early stage company building, product building, team building, culture building. So I ended up joining 4 other venture-backed startups. Many of them were consumer marketplace companies, and typically always at the Series A. At those startups, I led product at those startups. And then after 16 years of product leadership, I decided I wanted to do something very different. I connected with an old boss from my eBay days. She had just joined Omidyar Network, which was Pierre Omidyar, the eBay founder's venture firm. And I joined venture capital. A couple of years later, that partner and I spun off, and we formed Spero Ventures. to invest in the things that make life worth living. So we're investing in purpose-driven companies that could get to impact at scale. And then the funniest thing happened, which is the fall of 2020, middle of the pandemic. I was hearing 5 to 7 Zoom pitches a day, but I ended up getting pitched by the Swimply founders, who were telling me about their sort of story and how Swimply was, for those of you who might not know, a marketplace company that allows homeowners to rent out their pools locally and by the hour to folks in their local communities. And it completely blew up during the pandemic. So in 2019, they had launched the site with about 50,000 in bookings. And then the next summer, they did 5.5 million in bookings. And it was really just the 2 founders. All of the tech was outsourced to the Ukraine. And then they had some of their college friends running customer service. But as they were pitching to me, the story really resonated with me. And longer story short, not only did I have the conviction to want to invest, but I decided that I was going to join Swimply as their first full-time employee / executive. And then really was there for a couple of years helping to build Swimply from the ground up. And that was where I met Garrett, who I brought in as my head of strategy and operations. So I'll turn it over to Garrett to introduce himself.
Thanks, Han. Thanks everyone for joining and for being here today. I know how busy everyone can be, so appreciate you taking the time out of your schedules to engage with us. But thanks as well, Ha. So yeah, like Ha said, we met through Swimply, but before that, I grew my career at Airbnb. I joined in 2013, entry-level trust and safety work, dealing with property damage and safety claims and safety issues. And then watched it go from the Wild West of ragtag group of kids almost that had no idea what they were doing, and seeing that company all the way through to IPO and then leaving around that time. So by the end of my tenure there, I was the global head of the safety team. So any type of headline you've probably ever seen about a safety incident, whether it be cameras or other terrible things that could happen, I won't get into for obvious reasons. So that was usually me running the strategy and the response to a lot of those issues. So going through that level of sensitivity, urgency, complexity helped me understand the importance of really good proactive strategic development and operational rigor and discipline in order to navigate those often murky and complex waters. And so once I left Airbnb, I was starting a consulting business, got in touch through my network with Ha, saw a lot of overlap with Airbnb Swimply. Was really excited to get at the ground level again, similar to her interest in why she joined, and to build something the right way from the ground up on a foundational basis in a way that could sustain the company for years to come. And so that's sort of a lot of what we'll talk about today, is how to best do that for yourselves.
Okay, so I thought I would start by sharing a story about Swimply. So as I mentioned, in the fall of 2020, the Swimply founders pitched to me. They had just exited a really successful season after having done about 5.5 million in bookings with no team. They decided to raise some venture capital. I met with them and they were able to successfully close their $10 million round. Fast forward the following summer, and I was there helping them to build this business. We tripled bookings. So we got to close to $18 million in bookings. And we decided that the market was hot and the capital was flowing, and let's go out and raise another round. So we did. So we raised $40 million exactly 1 year later. And we raised it from a bunch of awesome venture capitalists, as well as great marketplace investors as well. But not everybody sort of sees a success story. In fact, like 60% of Series A startups aren't able to raise their next round. And if you look at the graph, you can sort of see like seed funded startups sort of starting at 100%, every single round gets increasingly difficult to raise. And why is that? So, I've been on both sides of the table. And Garrett and I have been operators for a long time. And one of the things that we're fully well aware of is that sometimes founders aren't even clear about what the milestones are that are needed to raise their next round. And so I'll share a little secret with you, which was, despite us being able to raise $30 million from VCs, it was not easy. We talked to over 50 VCs and 49 plus said no to us. But fortunately, we were able to find one VC that believed in us to write the term sheet. But many of those VCs said no, despite us growing 3 times year over year, which is phenomenal growth. And the reasons why they passed included things like they wanted us to expand into other verticals to reduce the seasonality of the business. They wanted us to have a very, very strong unit economic model. They wanted us to prove that we knew how to grow this business, and that every dollar we put into the business, we could get $3 in return. They also wanted us to sort of prove out like customer retention, right? So not that customers find out about us maybe through PR or through your friends and book once or twice, but they're developing a habit and coming back over and over and over again. So had we known these milestones a little bit more, I think we would have been able to sort of put together the right plan and have a more sort of compelling pitch when we went out to raise. So it's important for founders to understand the milestones. The other thing is that growth isn't enough, and especially in this market, VCs are really looking for startups to build true enduring enterprise value. So what are your network effects? What's the moat? What's the defensibility that you're building? Do you have a strong, healthy business that has a clear path to profitability? And your strategy should outline that as well. Other reasons why startups might fail is they might achieve goals. So not even whether it's not able to grow sort of as fast as VCs want, or some of the things that I sort of described, there are other goals that VCs are looking for to be able to fund startups, and startups not achieving sort of those goals or outcomes. And then finally, poor mitigation of risks. So some of the feedback that we had when we went out to raise money from VCs included things like insurance and trust and safety, which is why we brought in Garrett, or regulatory concerns, right? Like our hosts maybe getting shut down because it wasn't legal, quote unquote, to rent out their pools. So understanding those poor mitigation risks and actually having a plan to address them, I think will certainly help startups as they are looking to raise subsequent rounds. So we all believe that startups need a strategy, and this is kind of where you all come in, and let's make it a little bit interactive. So I would love to get everybody's thoughts on why we think startups might need a strategy, and might have alluded to some of it earlier, but feel free to, if you're not shy, feel free to unmute yourself and share some of your thoughts. And then if you are shy, you can type into the chat and maybe we'll read some off. And I'm not afraid to cold call. Okay, so Benny raised his hand.
I'll go first, so maybe others will do it. I'm pretty sure from experience as an entrepreneur and investor, one of the main reason is startups can be a complete roller coaster, and there's just so many things out there that you're going to have to try and put the fire off. That if you don't have, well, if you have a strategy, you may not follow it, but if you don't have a strategy, then you're deemed to fade.
Benny, I love that. I mean, in a startup, there's like 1,000 different distractions, and so it's easy to kind of go off path, especially if you don't know what the path is. So I love that. Kate, you raised your hand.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we need a strategy to serve as like a roadmap, right? It kind of reminds me of back in the day when you would go to AAA and you'd be taking a road trip across the country, and they would map out every stop you would make along the way. You would know which hotel you're staying at, you'd know what activities you're doing, and you'd map out your entire trip to get you where you're going, and so absolutely, like we need that structure and those milestones to hit along the way.
Mm-hmm. And that's a great analogy. I think I might use it for a future webinar. So excellent. So let's get into it. So I think this was mentioned already, sort of knowing where you're going and what outcomes you want to achieve. And then aligning teams around the desired outcomes and plans. So if you can't at the executive level articulate what your sort of strategy and sort of the plan to get there, how will your teams know what to do? They'll probably do the easiest thing, which is sort of the day-to-day, right? And it's so easy to get bogged down in the day-to-day, as opposed to like sort of thinking strategic long-term and prioritizing the right set of initiatives. And one of the things I love about strategy is sort of the discipline to be able to sort of say no and stay focused, right? So I was a product leader. Many of you on this call might be product leaders too. And how many times have we had like, okay, so marketing has this request for us, sales has this request for us, biz dev has a request for us. And without a strategy, it's easy to sort of say, sure, yes, we'll do that because the customer is asking for that. It's really, really important to sort of stay in your lane and know what you're going to say yes to and what you're going to say no to. And then finally, and one of the things I love about strategy is that it's inspirational and motivational, right? So companies or employees might join your startup because of the mission and they're excited to join the mission, but what's going to help them bound out of bed out every day and excited to do the work day in and day out is that they know how their work ties into the larger company vision and strategy. And they know that what they're doing will directly impact those outcomes. And then I wanted to sort of end with the Steve Jobs quote, focus means saying no to the 100 good ideas that are out there. You have to pick carefully. And I'm actually as proud of the things that we haven't done as the things that we've done. So strategy means saying no. Okay, and then moving on, what is strategy? So just go through this really quickly and then we'll get into a strategic framework. So strategy helps to define the end state that you are trying to achieve and how you will win. And then it also defines how you will create customer value. So being a product leader, like what are your customers' needs and pain points and how are you going to offer a product or service that is really compelling and meets their needs? And then also, as a company, how will you create enduring enterprise value? So it's not enough to just grow. There's a lot of other factors. Can you build a profitable company? Does it have legs? Is it a venture scale company? And how will you deliver that enterprise value? And then finally, it's the plan for how you will make this a reality. So what we've seen, Garrett and I, in working with lots of startup teams, is that most startups and probably companies too are really, really bad at strategy, and teams aren't as strategic as we'd like them to be. And why is that? I think one of the reasons is that strategy, not all of us have gone to business school. It can be hard to craft, and there's not necessarily a good framework for how to craft it. And so it's easy for teams to just sort of okay, strategy is hard. I'm gonna put that off. I'm gonna sort of work on the day-to-day fires, shipping products and features and bugs, because that feels easy. Whereas thinking strategically harder, and I don't really have a framework for how to think about strategy. So Garrett and I are going to share with you sort of one framework that we use in crafting strategy to turn teams into being more proactive and strategic. So first, it starts with mission. And this is really the why, right? So why do we exist? And so 10 years from now, you're going to produce something into the world. But what is sort of that inspirational vision and mission statement that you're going to put out on why we exist and what we're trying to achieve? And the vision, similarly, is that once you've achieved this mission of yours, what does the world look like after we've achieved it? I've gotten mission vision confused a lot in the years. I think I figured it out, and I'll share a couple of examples. But mission is the inspirational statement, and then the vision is sort of the what. So what are you going to put into the world to help you achieve your mission? Value proposition. So and this is really sort of the customer focus, right? So your customers have pain points and needs, and their hair is burning. So what is your solution that you're going to bring out into the world that solves their pain and puts out that sort of fire? And what is unique about your offering? And then we have sort of differentiation. So how will we distinguish ourselves in the marketplace? So you're going to have tons of competitors out there. So what's different or unique about your product, service, or offering than what your competition offers? And then finally, sort of the strategy or the strategic pillars, which is really the how. So once we know where we're going, this is sort of the how we're going to achieve it and our path to winning. Okay, so I wanted to share a couple of examples with you. So first, we'll start with the sort of the Swimply strategy, just to kind of bring the framework to life. The mission, remember I said that the mission should be sort of the inspirational statement of what you're trying to bring into the world. And so for Swimply, and this was something that I worked with the founders on in sort of the first year I was there, and then Garrett, when he came on, helped us to refine it along with some of the other executives that we had brought in. But our mission was to bring local communities together through joy and play. So super inspirational, joy, play, communities. And then for the vision statement, what we came up with was that we wanted to bring about into the world the ability for everyone who has a space, so homeowners who have a space, that they can share their sort of spaces and their passions with others in their local community. So a world where everyone has access to the space they need to pursue their passions and build connection. And then the value proposition in terms of what we were going to deliver to customers was that homeowners can rent unique spaces to neighbors locally and by the hour. So I mentioned in the beginning that Swimply was similar to Airbnb, but for swimming pools, not quite, right? So like we decided that we were really going to focus on rentals by the hour instead of sort of overnight stays, and that we were going to focus on sort of local rather than travel. So, you could belong not just anywhere, which was the Airbnb slogan, you could actually belong right in your local communities. And then for differentiation, what we came up with was that this was going to be a private experience. So unlike like the public beach or pool, you would have the space entirely to yourself if you rented it. As I mentioned, it was a focus on sort of hourly. You can rent it for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. And then we wanted the experience to be joyful. And of course, pools are joyful, but the experience with the host, the experience in booking, the experience in sort of the post-booking follow-up should be joyful. And we wanted to also focus on building a trusted and safe marketplace, which is, again, why we brought in Garrett from his Airbnb sort of experience to really help us double down on safety. And then we wanted to start with pools. So we were building a new category, new habit. We really didn't want to sort of spread ourselves too thin, like peanut butter, and we really wanted to sort of own and dominate sort of the market for pools. And then in terms of the strategic pillars that we came up with, there were 3. So the first was create the market and normalize pool sharing and make it feel less weird. So especially in the beginning, it was kind of weird to like go into like a stranger's backyard and like to swim in their pool without ever having to meet them. And we wanted to normalize that. And we really wanted to just own the category and dominate it before any competitors came in. And then second, we wanted to lead on trust and safety and regulatory. So we sort of hired best-in-class leaders on both fronts to lead their teams and put together the people, process, discipline for us to lead in those areas. And then finally, we did want to start after sort of having the dominant market share in pools to start looking into other categories to expand into, such as sports courts. So tennis courts and pickleballs is what's next for Swimply. So you'll probably hear a lot more about it next summer. I saw a hand go up. Is that, do we have a question? No? Okay. All right. Well, so I'm going to keep going and I'm going to turn it over to you now. So I thought it would be fun to also pull another example and one that most everybody is familiar with, which is Tesla. So let's start with mission. So maybe for those folks who are bold enough to unmute yourself, like what do you think Tesla's mission is? And again, that's that inspirational sort of 10-year statement of why we should exist in the world. Okay, I'm gonna have to cold call unless I'm gonna
This is where
cold
Google
call.
is your friend.
I'm gonna cold call Mark.
Yeah, this is a tough one. Happy to chime in here. This one's a tough one, in part because we all know the company, and I'm realizing I should probably know more about Tesla than I do. So I'll put myself on the spot here and just say mission. Okay, I think their mission is to, maybe I'll take vision. That might be easier. It's something like, I'm going to guess, automate. Like, machines that automate the mundane parts of our lives, right? From transportation and EVs through to, personal assistant androids that walk around with us and lift heavy things that we don't want to lift, do the jobs we don't want to do.
I like it. Okay, that's a good stab at it. Anybody else? Sarah, I'm going to cold call you, Sarah Holden.
Mark and I have like targets that say we're from the same company and on the same team.
Oh, is that right? Oh, well, I'm glad to have you here.
Oh man, mission needs to be short and sexy. So it's got to be something like, and similar to Mark as well. I feel like I should know more about Tesla. Gamify the world and turn everything into a spaceship.
That's a good take. It's a good take. Okay, I'm gonna share with you what I pulled from Tesla's website, right? So again, sort of the inspirational statement, which is to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. And you'll notice that the mission statement actually doesn't tell us how Tesla plans to do it yet, or what they want to bring into the world, but that this is sort of like, the end state that they want to achieve, if they're successful. And then vision, and I think Mark, you hit it in that on the head in terms of sort of build a company that's sort of focused on sustainability. But they were going to start with building the world's most compelling car company. And then, all right, let's call in a couple of others. So value prop and differentiation. So take one of the two and take a stab at what you think it might be. Okay, Kate. I like how Kate's bold today.
So value prop is the for the value to the customer, right?
That's right.
So I would say that Tesla's value prop is to look cool while saving the planet and saving money.
Okay, I like it. Yeah. Build a cool car and then help save the planet. I like it. Anybody else want to sort of take a stab at value prop or differentiation? All right,
Hey,
who am I going to call?
this
Oh,
is
Daniel.
Dave.
Daniel.
Sure, I'll jump in. I actually think Tesla is basically just an alternative to a supercar. That's basically the way they've built their brand. It's a cheap supercar.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll tell again. This
Hey,
some of this.
can you hear me?
Who?
Can
Go
you hear
ahead.
me?
Go ahead.
Hey, this is Dave. Dave Zinman. Hello,
Dave.
everybody.
Hi, Dave.
I join all of Ha's presentations because I always learn something. I was just thinking that in listening to Elon and Tesla, basically the differentiation is innovation in electric transport and in batteries and software. That's where the differentiation is.
Like that vertical integration with the software. Yeah.
You got it, Dave. Okay, so this is my stab at it. This wasn't on the website, but sort of thought about it and kind of here's what I came up with. So in terms of the value prop, and so again, sort of customer focus, right? So they were going to build the best in class electric vehicles. It was going to be awesome design, fast acceleration, so high performance. Obviously, it was going to be green. EVs by definition are green, but then they were also going to be energy efficient with the batteries, and then long range, right? So you could actually, and Dave, I know you have a Tesla, you can drive to Tahoe with just one sort of charge there. And then differentiation, Dave, I think spot on. So some of the differentiating factors, they were going to be sort of vertically integrated. They were going to focus on software, not just the hardware of the car. They were going to own a lot of their own plants and sort of produce the batteries. And then they were not going to sell through dealerships. So they were going to sort of have direct distribution by, having their own sort of showcase retail and also sell online. And then they were going to build a love mark brand. And then in terms of strategic pillars, and I'm going to go fast because I know Garrett, I'm ate into Garrett's time, but this is fun for me. So here's sort of my stab at the strategy. So first was create the market for electric vehicles. So when they started, there were no electric vehicles around. So they really were creating a new category. I think a couple of other car companies that tried before and failed. Anyways, they decided that they were going to be cool and sexy, as some folks had mentioned, and they were going to start with the sports cars. So it was the first car was the Tesla Roadster. It was super high end, expensive, but it was a sexy sports car that had fast acceleration. But they were going to use that to then be able to then go more down market and build an affordable car, and an even more affordable car. And then Dave mentioned that they were going to also lead with vertical integration. So I mentioned having their own plants, building their own batteries, ERP systems, charging stations, and then they were going to own their own distribution channels. So that was my stab at it. Hopefully I got it right. Okay, over to you, Garrett, and I'm going to stop the screen share.
And while we transition, I believe Tanya has a question.
Oh yeah, real quick. I know we're trying to move forward, but I was just curious. In the previous slide, nothing said about there was nothing that was said about the customer. Usually when you're creating a product strategy, somewhere in there needs to be the customer in the focus. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of put the customer in the sort of the value proposition. So, what are you going to deliver to customers that, that has value to them and is differentiated? I have a whole other talk on product strategy where we really do go into, what are the customer benefits and the customer value proposition, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, absolutely, customers should be part of the strategy and the focus on, what is it that they're looking for and how are you going to uniquely deliver something that is compelling to them. So spot on.
All right, thanks for the question, Tanya. So we've had the last 30 minutes talk about the importance of strategy and why we need to build it and get it right and how it's going to help us win. But I'm here to tell you it's not enough. You could have the best strategy in the world, but if you don't have the right goals and the right operational capacity or rigor to bring that strategy to life, then it's not enough and you won't be able to realize your potential. So we're going to talk now more so about the operational piece and then finish off with the people piece. So for beginning, I'm going to talk about the OKR framework because it seems to be the most utilized one, and it's just a nice straightforward way to conceptualize goal setting in a strategic way. So OKR, for those not familiar with it, the O stands for objectives. It's the overarching goals that inspire and set direction to where we need to go. And then the key results are the measurable metrics, for lack of a better term, to help you know and measure over time how well you're achieving those objectives. And then the initiatives are the specific tasks you're going to assign your resources to that you believe will have the best chance of achieving the key results, which will then in turn have the best chance of you reaching your objectives. So we'll go through an example right now of Swimply. So I'm just going to click through and talk about it more big picture. So you'll notice a couple of themes here. I guess I'll speak to those themes. Is objectives 1 and 3 are really focused on the customer and perceptions of the brand and of the experience. So number 1 is really about customer support and building a good people culture. And the belief there is that we understand, and like this was about year 2, year 3, where we're expecting another 2x, 3x growth year. And with 90% of the growth, it's simply being organic. We know that the more new customers we inspire and have great experiences through, and when things go wrong with a spotty app with some bugs that we're all building as, building the ship as we're sailing it, if we could turn those bad experiences into really good ones through really happy and productive teams that are very effective and have good training programs, et cetera, then we're going to be able to maximize customer acquisition costs and make sure we're not eating into our total addressable market over time. And if we get this right, it's going to stepping stone year over year into more organic growth and really lean into that space. So we felt that was really important. Number 3 is trust and safety. Haas spoke on it earlier about regulatory insurance. People, when they're trying something new like this, going into somebody's backyard, private space, body image issues and things like that, kids and safety, drowning is a significant risk. So we understand that people in the communities need to feel a sense of trust and safety within the marketplace, and that they know when they book a pool, they're going to have a great experience. Then you go to objectives 2 and 4, and these are more about 2 being the core business and shoring that up and maximizing the potential of that vertical. And then number 4, Haas spoke to it earlier as a part of the 3 strategic pillars, is to expand beyond pools and start dipping our toes into other areas such as the tennis and pickleball sports and things like that. And it's a fun fact, during the pandemic, the number 1 sport in terms of growth in the country was pickleball. And so your goals here and your objectives should align with your strategic pillars. In a lot of ways, it can kind of step outside of it and evolve beyond them a little bit, but these really should be tied to those strategic pillars. And then the key results are the specific metrics that you believe if you achieve them will mean you've realized your objectives. So a quick example there is, we know we need to hire 40 hires by peak because Swimply's business model, unlike Airbnb's, where people plan in advance and maybe potential months out, they book their Airbnb. A lot of people on Swimply sign up book their pool. Let's check-in is in an hour, and then they have questions. So our ability to be responsive through multiple contact channels, chat, email, etc., was really critical. So we need to make sure we hired and trained people extremely quickly to get them ready for a very seasonal season. And then 90% employee satisfaction. Happy employees make happy customers when supporting them. For the sake of time, I'll move on to other slides. But now that we have our goals, now we have to figure out, okay, we have our strategic pillars. Now we have our goals. We have the metrics we're going to try to hit over time. Now we need to figure out what initiatives we want to prioritize with the resources we have in order to hit those metrics and make those objectives and bring the strategy to life. So this is one of the hardest things, I think, for startups to figure out and do well, because there's always a fire some week where something's broken and you need to just throw all your engineers at it and fix it in order to get back to the roadmap you've already built. And then if you do that enough times, the roadmap that you've laid out for the quarter or for the 6-month period, whatever it might be, is broken and falls apart, and you're constantly in a state of having to rebuild the roadmap. And so there are many types of frameworks to help with prioritization and assessing the actual level of work required to deliver each initiative. This is one of them. This is pretty just broader, straightforward one, but top left quadrant, you'll see high impact, low complexity. You'll want to prioritize these every time. And then on the bottom right quadrant, low impact, high complexity. If it's low impact, high complexity, it's not worth your time. Don't even bother with it. And then the other two quadrants, I'll let you read them for yourselves, but if it's high impact, high complexity, that's usually a strategic initiative that you're saying this is going to take a lot of resource and time, but it's a foundational piece that if we do this now, we're going to avoid a lot of pain in the future and help set ourselves up for success years down the road. So it's a way to take your nose off the screen, see the bigger picture, and take a little bit of a hit in the short term from a resource perspective in order to see long-term gains. So when I say impact, it's the impact you expect this initiative to have on your KRs or objectives. When I say complexity, it's a measure of how many resources you think will be required to deliver over how long of a period of time. So in engineering, in the product world, a lot of work happens on 2-week sprints. So an example of a low complexity initiative might be 2 engineers on a 2-week sprint. An example of a high complexity initiative might be 10 engineers on a 10-week time period. And so that difference, if you know you only have a certain amount of engineers over a certain amount of time, and you know you need to hit this goal by a certain date, as you begin to come up with these initiatives and start to build out the expected impact and complexity, the picture becomes a lot clearer of what's actually reasonable or realistic to achieve. And to Ha's point, one of the initial slides, it helps you learn what to say no to. So you put your resources to the things that will have the most impact over the shortest period of time. So these are frameworks to help you prioritize initiatives. Now you have your strategy, you have your goals, you have your initiatives, and you have a prioritized roadmap. Now, how do you keep track over time of how well you're progressing through those initiatives? Are those initiatives having the impact we expected them to? Did we not measure the complexity correctly and it's taking longer than it should have? Now, what adjustments do we have to make? Well, if we only set OKRs and set the roadmap up and then only check on it quarterly, we've likely dropped the ball and we're only now looking back to say where we screwed up and where we need to pivot moving forward, but that's too slow. So operational rigor is a cadence of planning and performance management, which is a part of the organizational habits we think every single company needs to embody at some point or another, earlier the better, in order to make sure you're always staying on track with the things you prioritized and your resources that you've allocated week over week. So at the bottom, you'll see roadmap review, program review, project meetings, company newsletters, one-on-ones, and this is that day-to-day tactical execution of tasks. As you move up to monthly, that's where you're kind of giving the company the bigger picture of how we're progressing across the board, so people feel a sense of connected to each other's work and how well the company's moving. It provides that level of transparency, which helps with motivation and inspiration to pick up the pace and do more work, perform better. Quarterly is where you really double check these OKRs. Okay, we set these OKRs. We then worked on this and we checked on progress week over week. Which OKRs did we hit? How well did we hit them? Now we need to make adjustments for the next quarter and strive for better, or maybe pivot a little bit. And maybe we had a gap in the last quarter. Now we need to pivot and fill that gap this next quarter. And then annually is where you take a big picture look of your entire organization and say, do we have the right org chart? Are we missing key leaders or key players in our company that over this last year we realized was just a gap that we didn't have the right people in place to pick up those pieces? So one of these OKRs really dropped off and struggled, and we kind of had to deprioritize it until we could get the right people in place. Great opportunity for performance and comp reviews to help keep employees engaged and help give them feedback on what was working, what wasn't working. And really make sure you have the right org structure in place, the right strategy in place for the next year, and then you're able to hit the ground running January, February, whenever your calendar year is, to start hiring and get the pieces in place to deliver on the next roadmap. So that's the operational piece. The third most critical piece of them all is the people. So I know I started my little spiel by saying we talked about strategy, and I'm here to tell you it's not enough. Well, then I just talked about operational discipline and rigor, and I'm here to tell you that's also not enough. You could have a great strategy, super clear, super aligned, maximizes your differentiation value proposition, strategic pillars all funnel up into the mission and vision perfectly. You could have a great cadence of meetings and reviews and a prioritized roadmap that you put a lot of planning and time and rigor into. But if you don't have the right people in place with the right level of engagement, productivity, motivation, quality orientation, personal accountability, positive collaboration and alignment on what those goals are, then you're gonna have chaos, and you're gonna have a lot of people maybe becoming siloed as you're building out more departments, from early seed to Series A, Series B, and become more siloed and just focus on what they can focus on. You're gonna see people firefighting more often than not, maybe not tracking great progress in the roadmaps, and it's all gonna fall by the wayside. So the final slide here is what we believe in our experience building a culture at Swimply, and in my time at Airbnb, seeing a wonderful world-class culture be built for me and for my peers and colleagues. These 5 drivers of people engagement will help ensure that the strategy you've built and the operational rigor you've embedded into your company as way of working will all become real. First is strategic clarity. So if you have good strategic clarity, you've built that strategy, and you've articulated it to your company, you've been transparent about it, there's going to be a resounding belief in the direction of the company, which makes people feel like I'm at a place that knows what they're doing, and I feel good about my long-term tenure here, so I'm comfortable. There's a certain level of psychological safety that comes with that. And it also builds trust in leadership to say, I believe in the executive team at my company because they put in the thought work, they have a strategy that makes sense and it's clear and aligns with what the business can achieve. And some of these initiatives that you put in place to help make sure this is real is what we've talked about all day. Long-term vision, OKRs, KPIs, and an annual roadmap. And bringing transparency to those things is the clear part. Second is autonomy. If people have a sense of autonomy and you trust them to make some mistakes, and you have some guardrails around it, so like on the right initiatives, you have good, clear role clarity and responsibilities, good decision-making frameworks to empower them to know when to make a decision or when to defer. You're doing performance management on a regular basis, so you're giving feedback on what's going well, what isn't. What core competencies do they excel at? Where do they have room to grow? And if you do these things right, then the impact you're going to have is more creativity and innovation, more bottom up of ideas instead of just top down, and then a lot more personal ownership and accountability for the work they're doing. And again, a lot of the ownership and accountability piece can only really happen if you have these initiatives in place to kind of bring that clarity and bring that structure for them. And we find when that's done well, people hold themselves accountable. Professional growth. Everyone needs to feel a sense of longevity at a company, like they're learning new skills, they have new challenges. Variety is the spice of life in many ways, even though we do love routine as well. A good balance of both is super important. And so good, strong training programs, clear career pathing of what does it take to get to the next level, and do I have clarity on what success looks like in my current role. Management development, so people managers have the skills and abilities to have these difficult conversations and deliver feedback in a positive way that motivates and empowers people instead of tearing them down or making them feel like they're not valued or positive contributors. And the impact we see with this is really high performance and motivation and strong employee retention of your top talent, especially, which is critical because all companies are made of people and all things are built by people. So the success of your company is inevitably the people you keep and the people you hire. For recognition, this is really, it's one of the things that's easiest to overlook, I find, but it's one of the most important things for people is everyone wants to be seen and heard and feel like they're valued at the company that they work at. And recognition programs do a great job. And so I'm talking personal celebrations, birthdays, making sure they feel seen and heard, like I mentioned, just for who they are as a person, and then celebrating their work contribution. So what did they build? What did they do? And how did it help the company achieve, or the department or the team achieve these goals? Making sure that you're tying the strategy back to those individual contributions is so important for a person's sense of value and worth. And then employee awards. This could be employee of the month. If you have core values embedded, who embodied this core value the most this quarter or year, things like that. And so this helps people, like I mentioned, feel valued, and it also connects people's work to the mission, which is incredibly important. And then finally, a really strong culture. Another word for this could be an inclusive community and the sense of belonging within that community. These initiatives can be diversity, equity, inclusion programs. Examples of that are in hiring and onboarding. So how are you structuring your interview process and asking questions the same way to every candidate to make sure that you're not allowing bias to enter in? And by doing that, you're going to help create a culture of the best possible candidates, but also a diverse pool of candidates as well. Employee experience design. How do we want people from the moment we reach out to recruit or to hire an interview, to onboarding, to performance management, to career path and growth, to exiting the company should it come to that? That should be designed really well and fit within the core values and the culture of people first that you want to build within your team. And that means a lot to people. And then team building and social events, actually investing time and money in bringing teams together to build bonds and friendships and a sense of community. And what that's going to do is make people feel like they belong, they're valued, and you're going to see a lot more positive, healthy collaboration out of it. So to close, you need a great strategy. To bring that strategy to life, you need a really good operational cadence and discipline and rigor and processes. And for both of those things to be united and for you to achieve them both really well and bring that to life, you need a really strong people culture. And we believe these are some of the most important drivers to help achieve that. So if you do want to get in touch with us after, either to talk about some challenges your business is facing, how we might be able to help, or just to riff on some ideas we talked about just to build understanding, happy to meet and help. This is a way you can reach out to both Ha and I, should you wish.
Thank you. Oh, what were you going to say, Ha?
I was going to say, while we go through the Q&A, we're going to keep this slide up. And this is a way for you to give us feedback. So this is the second time Garrett and I have done this talk, but if you liked it, if you found it helpful, it'd be great to give some feedback on the good and the bad, so that the next time we give it, we can even improve upon it. So take out your phones, point your phone camera to the QR code, and it's 3 short questions, the NPS question, and what did you like best and what could go better. So please do stay on the line and help us fill out the survey and share your feedback while we go into Q&A.
Oh gosh, thank you so much, you guys. It's super interesting, insightful, and we have like so much engagement in the questions in the chat, and we've stuck with the same. I mean, everybody here has been involved in so many Zoom meetings, and the idea that we've stuck with the same group the whole time, the whole almost an hour, is really amazing and speaks to how great this presentation is. And I love that you guys want feedback. You know, a lot of people are sometimes scared of feedback. So the idea that you're looking at feedback, and just like all the properties you work on, that you're looking at this Net Promoter Score. I see there was somebody, Sarah had her hand up, but just one question beforehand, and we'll take questions, and there's already some here. Mark Stiles wrote a great quote that said, I think it was Peter Drucker who said, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." And you know, that which is a great quote, and you know, we've all lived that, and that was like that last page in your presentation. But do you think investors, you know, when you're looking at like what an investor is going to look at, and the things that you talked about at the start that you're working on and understanding the metrics by which they invest, do investors value this kind of emphasis on a corporate culture, on building a people first culture?
Yeah, I'll take that, just having been a VC. So I wish more did. I think our lead Series B investor, their motto is people first. So I know that they care deeply about culture. The challenge with the VC model, though, especially in hot markets, is that you do not have a whole lot of time to be able to diligence your companies at the level that you really want to before, especially for the hottest companies, a term sheet comes in place and then you need to make a decision quickly. So I do know some funds have operating partners that really drill in on like the founders, the quality of the leadership team, the culture, their operational rigor, et cetera. But I can't say that that is something that all VCs do as part of the diligence process. And they should, because I'm sure we've all been part of awesome cultures and part of not so great cultures. And you sort of see the dramatic difference in performance and the ability to build high performing teams and achieve outcomes like fast and get people aligned and motivated and inspired, et cetera, with great teams, great cultures. And then you sort of see what happens when you have a not so great culture. And so VCs should be looking at it more and investing in those very best companies.
That's great. Sarah, you had your hand up. So if you want to.
Yeah, thanks. And
thank
thank you.
you.
This has been a great hour. I'm wondering if either of you, or how have you guys experienced startups managing that messy middle of scaling their strategic planning as they move out of that startup space? I call it the teenager space, where like people join and they're like, wow, I can't believe you guys are so sophisticated, but you don't have any goals at all for your company. Yeah.
I can take that one, Han, if you want to elaborate, feel free.
Sure.
But
yeah,
as a part of the consulting practice, like this is something we've seen multiple times. And I think the people do a decent job of setting goals. I mean, they have their board, they have their fundraising rounds, and that kind of forces a lot of time intervals and certain achievements within that. And so we find a lot of people are okay on goals. They might not be the perfect goals and we can help audit, but it's the operational piece on how do you track that progress over time? How do you prioritize the right things? How do you and your leaders build a strategic mindset and stop and getting out of that week over week firefighting mindset that's very tactical? And so it's really about building that operational rigor and that cadence and the weekly business reviews and implementing the frameworks for prioritizing your resources and being really rigorous in that. And what we hear from a lot of executives and founders as they're trying to scale into that space is they don't have a COO or a person who's a change champion or who helps build these frameworks and best practices into how everybody works. They've gotten to where they've gotten by just saying, here are our goals. Now everyone, you've done this before. I trust you. Go build the thing and let's check back in and let me know if you need help. But then as you scale and you get past like 50 people, seems to be that number, the magic number, these departments start getting siloed and that starts breaking down very quickly. And so that seems to be the biggest struggle that as a part of our consulting practice, we work with founders and executives to help bridge that gap.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add is that, the operational cadence is really about sort of communication, transparency, accountability. So what we find often is that founders believe they have a strategy. They're like, oh yeah, we have a strategy and everybody knows what to do. And then you go and you interview the executives and then, the team below them. And they're like, we don't know what the strategy is. And it's because the founders maybe not be communicating enough because, and what we find is that sometimes you actually have to, repeat your strategy 4, 5, 6 times before it really starts being ingrained in the culture and the work. So it's funny. I mean, I was talking to this a CEO friend of mine the other day, and he was like, yeah, I was like having a one-on-one with somebody and he couldn't articulate the strategy, even though I had shared it in the all hands last week. I then sent out a newsletter with the strategy and, and like I had a conversation with the person like a week ago as well. And so it's one of those, just like, you just have to like communicate. And
Yep.
As Garrett mentioned, develop the operational rigor to make sure that it's just ingrained in like every single person in the company.
One of the best leaders I worked under at Airbnb, he had a funny saying. He said the three most important qualities of leadership are repetition, repetition, and repetition. So the more you drill it into people's minds, the more you're going to build that habit.
That's a great one, and repeat it in as many different ways as possible too, because everybody takes in information differently. Thanks. That's really great from both of you.
That's great. And it looks like Mark Jensen has a question. Mark, you're up next.
Yeah, hi there. Thank you. Great session. Real quick, just that was I think I've been feeling a lot of these pieces, but that was the most clear articulation of how they all fit together. So really well done. Thank you for that. Yeah, I was just curious if you've ever entered organizations or been a part of organizations where you knew you had to do this, but there were also potentially some maybe people or practice behavioral obstacles, for lack of a better term, where maybe some people are on board with change and strategy, and but other people maybe are more resistant to it. Any thoughts on that?
Well,
Yeah.
I'll tell you. Oh, do you
Go ahead.
want to take it, Garrett?
No, go ahead. I can add.
Okay.
Yeah,
I was going to say, I've worked at a number of different startups now, and I will say that a lot of founders will put in their best effort to try to attempt a strategy and a plan. And what we find is that where they fall short is sort of the operational sort of commitment to the plan, because founders are ideas people, right? So they have like 1,000 different ideas, and they're, like every morning when you wake up, like they're just, sharing over Slack or over email or calling you with like their next best idea. And as leaders, I think it's helpful to sort of say, okay, but how does that tie into sort of the overarching strategy that we've sort of defined for the company? Because founders will often get distracted by shiny objects and like whatever is like top of mind for them. And I always feel like the role of the executive too is to like ground them, to sort of say, great, you have 1,000 ideas, we can only do 10 of them. So, and so how does this fit into the strategy? Has there been new information that's kind of changed your mind in terms of what the highest priorities are, et cetera? Engage them in that dialogue. And I think it helps a ton. So, and anyways, the answer to your question is yes. I think every company is plagued with, like we have the strategy, but then being able to then really follow that through. It's really, really tough for most startups.
And I think to the question, Mark, was there an aspect of like how to get buy-in and the art or science rather of behavior change to kind of get that buy-in? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's one of the hardest things, I think, because especially as you're growing and getting bigger, you're now trying to appease or get buy-in from all different walks of life and the dozens or hundreds or thousands at times. And that's incredibly difficult to do, to cascade that information in a way that's both motivational and inspiring to the majority of the group. I find that implementing a really strong culture helps with this sense of collectiveness. And if that last slide, I'll go back to it if it'll let me. If you're able to do these things really well, you have the clarity, there's transparency, and there's belief in the direction, there's trust in leadership. People are more willing to buy in because they trust you. And trust is such a huge component of that. If there's a strong culture, people feel like they belong here, they're a part of a group and a part of something bigger than themselves. They feel supported and they feel like they're taken care of. They're going to be more willing to lean into these spaces that might otherwise make them feel uncomfortable. So there's no real silver bullet to that. This is the art side, as I call it, of behavior change, and then the science side is that operational rigor where you're building habits. Behavior change is, as people, we all can rewire our brains through habits and doing things repetitively, and it starts to form those new neural pathways, and we start to now think about things differently or approach things differently. We have new routines, and that's where the operational piece comes in. And what you need there is a person or a few people that are the arbiters of that change and that operational process and that rigor that helps get everyone in the organization on this habit of, okay, every week we have this meeting. So now the day before we're preparing for it, and quarterly we have this review of goals. And so we're getting ready to report on our success and our analysis of why we were able to achieve certain goals or why we struggled in others and how we're going to pivot moving forward. And that's how I think you can combine the art and science of getting that buy-in.
So at Swimply, Garrett was our change champion, because I found that, for my team, they were fairly junior, and so strategy was really hard for them, and then sticking to the plan was quite challenging. So Garrett came in and kind of was the change champion. So I'm noticing sort of we're out of time, so I want to be respectful for folks who have to drop off. Feel free to drop off. I can still stay on, Garrett. I'm assuming you can stay on for another 10 minutes or so to like get through more questions, but for those of you who need to drop off, thank you so much for joining us. I had a good time. Hopefully you learned something, and don't forget to fill out our survey. And I think Pam and Melinda will be sending out the survey link in case you didn't get to it. as well.
Yes, and everybody's been asking for the slides as well, so we'll send
and we will send
out all that information. Thank you so much. It's nice of you to stick around a little longer for some more questions. I think that people could stay here a really long time. We have such a big group that stayed on, and let's keep going. Tanya, you take the floor. That's great.
Yeah, I actually have two questions. I don't know if I'll get to both of them, but I guess the first question is, what is the role, do you think, and I kind of know the answer, but I'm curious about your opinion. What is the role that will be instituting the strategy, the operational rigor, and kind of putting that together? There is a product ops role that's kind of on the rise right now. There is the CPO role, and then there is just, the general, the VP of product or head of product. Like, in your experience, who should be in charge of this?
You want me to take that, Garrett?
Yeah.
Right. Well, I would say, within your department that you're leading, I do think that it's the department leader for your department. Now, for the, but there should also sort of be a plan at sort of the company level, sort of, cohesive, sort of overarching sort of strategy and roadmap and sort of the plan to get there. And that often is some type of change agent. So, Garrett and I were sharing with each other this sort of article written by David Sachs, where the title was, "You don't need a COO, you just need an operating cadence." And I think you can either have, whether it's the COO or somebody at the business level, kind of own that change management, or if you don't have that person, you can nominate somebody who's good at it and interested in it. So for Swimply, it was Garrett. It could be a chief of staff in your company. And if you really don't have anybody who's sort of great at it, then you can bring in folks from the outside. And so Garrett and I didn't really quite mention, but this is the work that we're planning on doing in this new year, is helping companies sort of develop that, not just the strategy if they need help with strategy, but the operational rigor and the operational excellence to move their teams, forward in this direction. So did that answer your question?
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, good.
All right, looks like we have Benny and then Suvda. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Yeah, well, congratulations. It was a great session. It's 11 p.m. in Israel, and I'm here to ask you the question because I think it's important. I think we all experience the New Year resolutions and eat healthy and sleep well and spend time with family and do the important things, and probably we end up going to McDonald's or giving up on the gym membership, right? So my question is, all of that said, it's brilliant. We all know, most of us know the life of an early stage startup. I'm having two different companies here in Israel, and the question is not how to agree that this is important. I've been on management teams, all of them will agree definitely we need it. Reality is very people are understaffed and overwhelmed. So how do you see I guess the real question is, what percentage of startups actually who believe in it are actually able to do it, and what differentiates them from the ones who will give up as soon as they don't have time for that?
Is that being the strategy, operations, like the things we talked about today, those that do that well versus those that don't?
Yeah, theoretically we all should abide to the Torah that was presented here, but reality kicks in and people have other priorities. So what do those who stick to the diet actually do?
I don't know the numbers there because I don't know how many actually do this well, and at what stage of their life cycle do they begin to do this in specific industries or across industries. If anyone has access to that data, I'd love to see it. But I think what you spoke to resonates with me really strongly. At Airbnb in the early days, it was just a hustle and a grind, and it was a cycle of burnout about every 2 years. You take a few weeks off, kind of recuperate, take a little easier, and you're feeling good, and then within 2 years you're burning out again. And I find this is a common story at a vast majority of startups, and just American work culture kind of tends to lean that way as well, from what I've seen and what I hear from people. I think if people do this well, I think the critical thing is people feel like if they're working hard, they're doing enough, but they could be a hamster on a wheel, not doing the right things and really just working hard for the sake of working hard. And that gives them a sense of fulfillment or purpose because at least they're busy, and so they must be doing something right. And I think those leaders and organizations that understand the difference between just working for the sake of working and trying to be as effective as possible with the time you have. They realize you could do 40 hours of work per week in 20 hours if you're being effective and really planning and being strategic in how you're approaching not only your organization or your departments and how you organize them, but as individuals and how you approach your day-to-day work. So I think this is a huge time saver and a huge boon to this problem of burnout, as long as we don't just be really effective for 20 hours and just feel the other 20 hours of effectiveness too. And now we're doubling our production, which is great, but still in that cycle of burnout. So I don't have the metrics for you, but that's how I view the importance of this work and how it could help with that.
Yeah, I would say, it's hard for startups. It's hard for founders for many of the reasons I articulated before. So very few startups do this well. I think like kind of at the Series C, they're kind of forced to, because now they've gotten up to like 500 people, and they really, if they don't,
it's not a choice anymore.
The company falls apart. And so, we always, encourage founders to kind of start earlier, and that's why we're just sort of doing this session. And some founders, get it. They're learning animals. They want to improve, and they're willing to learn and bring in the right people and do the hard work. And then others don't. And as executive leaders, you sort of have to decide, is that is this the founder that you want to be working for if they don't believe in this type of work. But at some point, especially if they get pretty far along, like they will be forced to do this work, whether it's the board is making them do this work or they realize that everything is broken and they just have to like stop and kind of slow down to move fast. So very few do it well.
And thanks for the question. It's a good one. Hard to answer, but hopefully we did it justice. I do have a hard stop.
I'm curious what those few ones do, but that's okay.
Yeah, exactly. I have a hard stop at 1:15, but let's try to squeeze in however many questions we can that time. Suvda, you're up, and then if we have time, Christian and Jacqueline. But if we have time.
Great. Thanks, Ha and Garrett, for the informative session. So your strategy and OKRs help you with roadmap prioritization, right? And so I was reflecting how much capacity to dedicate to each of your strategic pillars and to address your each of your OKRs. Like, how do you balance that?
Sort of like a percent allocation. If this is number one, is that 60% of our resources versus others? Yeah. That can be tough to do. As you're looking at your vision and mission, the strategic pillars are sort of like, what are the foundational pieces that we think we need to achieve to us to really move earnestly in this direction? And as you discuss it and as you find out what things you can do that are reasonable with the technology you have, with the resources you have, and the people skills you have, by going through that roadmap prioritization exercise of impact and complexity, my approach is it tends to kind of come to fruition the way it needs to from that. If you try to force percentages and now you're trying to force creating more initiatives to fit that bucket of 60%, 20%, whatever it be, then you might be getting yourself into a little bit of trouble. So I tend to kind of approach it more organically with the dialogue and the discussion with the teams and what makes the most sense for how we could apply our resources and what initiatives should we be building. And then the allocation kind of comes from there. And then maybe we sanity check it with that. It's like, okay, we seem to have leaned really far into pillar 3. Does that feel right? Or should we maybe drop one or two things and think about investing more in pillar 2? And for me, that's a collaborative discussion that's ongoing and organic and constantly evolving. I try not to box these things too strictly, but what do you think, Ha?
I was just thinking about the analogy of like, so you're trying to put rocks, pebbles, and sand into a jar. And, you put the rocks in first, which is your strategic initiatives, right? Because that's the way that everything fits, the rocks first, the pebbles, and then the sand. And that's the way everything fits. And I'll say that like, it's hard, like your strategic bets, it's hard to do more than one strategic bet at a time, unless you have multiple teams working on different sort of strategic pillars or initiatives. But you pretty much like, for the quarter, like you pick one of those, like hopefully the strategy is over the year, you pick one of those pillars to really focus on in on. And that's, and that's a conversation with the executive team and your CEO and the rest of the team, your customers, et cetera. You pick one, and then, you'll probably allocate 20-30% for those pebbles or rocks, those small features and those bugs. Those will squeeze in, but pick one per team at least, and what you want to bet on for the quarter.
That's great. Thank you.
I think you're muted. There you go.
I am. Han, Garrett, this has been, I know we're creeping up on 4:15. It's so nice for you to spend more time with us. It's super interesting. You can read everyone's been so excited and has learned so much from this. Please remember, do you want to put the QR code up one more time? And I'll put the link here because we love feedback. So I'm going to put the link also in the chat here, and we'll send it to you. So everyone here will get a letter with a recording, an email with the recording and the slides, and we'll include the link for feedback as well. And if you, the reason I filled in for Melinda here was because she ran to catch an airplane. So we have a great group of women over at WAFFA. And if you want to learn more, go to hellowaffa.org. We'd love for you to join our weekly newsletter and our Slack community. And Han, Garrett, do everyone know how to reach you if they need to? That will be in the slides that we share, right? Cool.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, listen, such a great way to start 2023. I love this. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
It was really great.
Right. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.